is keeping us all on the straight and narrow and well organized. It turns out that active listening contributes to good leadership. Since 2005, Deval Patrick has been practicing that. He's been listening to the people of Massachusetts. He's been listening to the people across America and trying to not only listen to their concerns, but do something about them. And as someone who worked on his team on both of his races, that is so desperately needed today. We are all better for his leadership in Massachusetts. He brought us out of the Great Recession stronger, and it is something that he has a little bit of experience at. So, Governor, please share with us your wisdom about how together we can win and repair and save our democracy. And I've always wanted to say, introduce somebody this way. It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce our friend, Governor Deval Patrick.
Thank you, David.
Yay!
That is so generous. Thank you. David, you're great. I appreciate the generosity of your introduction and all of your friendship and partnership over the years. I want to second all of your compliments and acknowledgments to Gus and Veronica and the rest of the team, and thank all of the delegates, Massachusetts Democrats, for having me this morning. I know you've got a long roster of presentations today, so I'll try to be brief, except to say just it's really great to be with all of you on this last day of the Democratic National Convention. I wish we could be together in Milwaukee or even somewhere in Massachusetts, but of course we can't, for the same reasons we can't be at work or back in the classrooms or with our grandchildren or out to dinner or the movies because of a deadly pandemic, yes, but also because of the utter failure of Donald Trump to lead us safely through it. It really is as simple as that. And it's important that you remember that for, I think, its own sake, but as one more example among too many of the incompetence and indifference, to say nothing of the lawlessness that the Trump administration has displayed from the very start. Remember that whenever you wonder whether elections matter. Remember that whenever you encounter friends, neighbors, and especially office holders who continue to excuse or worse, enable the president. Remember that when it's time to send one of our two remarkable candidates to the Senate and Democrats to every House seat, or when you're asked to go help Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire or Sarah Gideon in Maine. Remember that whatever your allegiances were during the primaries, when you're asked to organize and get the vote out to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in November, it should surprise no one, not a single person, that Donald Trump, a man so incapable of caring about anything or anyone but himself, is also incapable of serving America's needs. I thought President Obama made this point brilliantly last night. From the first day in office, we have watched him alternate between deference to the powerful and cruelty to the weak. I've had enough, and I know you have too. And we all know how important it is to do everything we can to vote Trump and all of his congressional enablers out come November. So in the few minutes that we have together this morning, I want to look ahead. I want to think about and challenge all of us to think about what waits for us on the other side of victory. Because if the character of the candidates is always an issue in elections, this time it's the character of the country that's at issue. This time, we're voting on what it means or ought to mean to be American. I'll tell you what I mean by that. My father-in-law used to unfurl an American flag every morning and mount it in a bracket outside the front door of the family's small detached house in the Hollis neighborhood of Queens, New York. He left his childhood home in Vicksburg, Mississippi at 16 and lied about his age to join the Navy and fight the Axis in World War II. He was proud of his service on a minesweeper and of America's role in the world as a defender of freedom. At the end of each day, when he would retire the flag for the night, he would sometimes order his 3 young children to join him on the front stoop, standing at attention, occasionally having them salute. My father-in-law was a patriot. So am I. He loved patriotic songs and stories. I get a lump in my throat when I hear the national anthem, especially at official events when I was at the Justice Department or as governor. We were both moved by and believed that Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream was, as he put it, deeply rooted in the American dream. Like my father-in-law, I have flown the American flag at whatever home we've lived in for more than 30 years now, though I will say without quite the ceremony. Patriotism for Black Americans is tricky. It's tricky to love a country that doesn't always love you back. It breaks my heart to think of the Black soldiers and sailors who returned from combat overseas after the World Wars only to be moved to the colored car on the train home or off the sidewalk to make way for white pedestrians. Some were lynched. There's some famous photographs of some wearing their military uniforms hanging from trees. When my father-in-law joined the Navy, he lied not just about his age, but also about his race, so he wouldn't be stuck in the galley. He was a fair-skinned man, so he could get away with that. Old folks used to call that passing. He lied to buy that house in Hollis, too, where he raised and lowered his flag every day, signing all the papers alone and then moving his toffee-colored wife and children in sight unseen. Once it was apparent that the new neighbors were Black, white homeowners hastily moved out. But he was still a patriot. His patriotism was never about symbols or wishful thinking. He believed in America for the same reason I do, because it gave him a chance. He learned to be an electrician in the Navy. He got a good union job at a factory after his discharge and ultimately started his own electrical contracting company. He built a conventional, respectable, middle-class life and loved the country that made that possible. I think if you ask most immigrants, what I've found is that they will offer similar reasons for their own sort of rock-solid patriotism. I don't know when patriotism in this country got reduced to lapel pins and flyovers and stupid arguments about pro athletes taking a knee. Like my father-in-law, I love that America is built on aspiration, reaching for civic ideals of equality, opportunity, and fair play, those essential ingredients of liberty itself. America was flawed from the start, of course, but part of the genius of our founding is that the mechanisms for reinventing ourselves are built in. What we are supposed to do, indeed, what we are called to do right now, is to use those mechanisms to close the gap between our reality and our ideals. That's why this election, in my view, that's why what happens afterwards are so important. Because, you know, while we quarrel over whose policy plans are better or who's more progressive or more moderate and which is more important, the gap between our reality and our ideals keeps widening. The economic fragility, social isolation, and hopelessness that Black people have known for generations now constrains Americans everywhere. Why? Because we've stopped investing the time, the ideas, and the money in the things that enable Americans of every background to have a real chance. Just think about that. The retreat from public schools, the unaffordability of housing and healthcare, and the unreliability of the social safety net, the unbearable burden of student debt, the tolerance for wage suppression as the economy shifts, the weakening of unions, the neglect of dated and decaying infrastructure. The gap didn't get this wide overnight. Over the last 4 or 5 decades, under a steady rhetorical drumbeat that equates liberty with selfishness, treats justice as a limited resource, and portrays taxes as an affront instead of the price of civilization, America has gradually turned her back on her own future. Before the pandemic, the climate was in crisis. The poor were stuck in poverty, and the middle class were a paycheck or two away from being poor. Before the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, welfare reform was unnecessarily harsh. Criminal sentencing placed punishment above healing. Health disparities were widespread, and racist attacks on immigrants and immigration itself were common. Before President Trump, business emphasized short-term gain for investors over long-term value for workers and the community, and even managed to convince some of us that the Dow Jones average is an economic indicator. I'm not talking about the hard choices and sacrifices that an emergency like this pandemic requires. I'm talking about something far, far more insidious. You know, one United States senator recently called slavery a necessary evil to create our nation. Business leaders accept cutting jobs and wages as a necessary evil to improve a company's earnings next quarter. Many accept climate change as a necessary evil for keeping the lights on. Municipal leaders and parents alike accept resegregation as a necessary evil for neighborhood schools. Policymakers accept warehousing lawbreakers, especially if poor and Black, as a necessary evil to reduce crime, and easy access by civilians to military weapons as a necessary evil for protecting gun rights. Trump officials are telling us that separating children from their refugee parents is a necessary evil to limit migration. Ending unemployment benefits today is a necessary evil, Republicans tell us, to get people to go back to work, as if tens of millions of jobs had not actually disappeared in the last few months. And for those who do go back, employers having immunity from lawsuits for exposing their workers to the virus is a necessary evil, we are told, even though many workers are returning to factories, shops, or meat packing plants that refuse to do what's necessary to keep them safe. You know, daycare and maintenance workers, delivery, bus and subway drivers, and nurses are deemed essential nowadays, but not enough every day to warrant paying a living wage. You've all heard me talk about growing up on the South Side of Chicago. I learned there that being in community is understanding your stake in your neighbor's dreams and struggles as well as your own. Our sense of national community has been unraveling. And as it does, economic mobility has stalled, wealth and opportunity gaps have widened, and despair is deepening. Necessary evil? In a country founded on civic ideals of equality, opportunity, and fair play, the question for true patriots is, when will we stop accepting evil as necessary? We need today a renewed understanding of patriotism. Because what we see today, what poses as leadership today, is not making America great. America's greatness comes from doing the work of closing that gap between our reality and our ideals for the meek as well as the mighty. In a sense, America is great when America is good. I still believe that America is what happens when vision, creativity, and grit get a fair chance. What's missing today is that chance. And we bear the responsibility, you and I, as patriots, through government and the private sector and in our personal lives and choices, to make that chance real. So no sitting this one out, not for you, I know, not for anyone you know. As we rally this week to nominate this historic Biden-Harris ticket, as we organize to win the Senate and hold the House, as we make phone calls and send texts to friends and family and strangers alike to urge them to vote and to get everyone they know to vote to help deliver an overwhelming Democratic victory. I ask that we remember that the character of America is what we choose to make it. And this time, as patriots, I want us finally and unequivocally to choose, in the words of the pledge, liberty and justice for all. Thanks so much for having me. Keep up the fight. Take care.
Oh, Governor, thank you so much. I wish you could hear everybody's clapping them around. You'll see it. It's just, this is what these breakfasts do to us. But someone posted, this is what leadership looks like. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will now pass it over to our Vice Chair, Leon Brathwaite.
Thank you, delegation. It's my honor to introduce our first speaker this morning. Julian Castro's path to public service began when his grandmother, Victoria, came to the United States at 7 years old. She never made it past the 4th grade, but worked hard to teach her family the value of hard work as she cleaned houses and worked as a maid. She passed on those values of hard work and perseverance to his mother, Rosie, who grew up and became a strong Chicana activist, educator, single mother to Julian and his twin brother, Joaquin. He was raised on the west side of San Antonio, where his mother instilled him with the power of action. During a campaign as the first Chicana to run for San Antonio City Council, she taught them, if you want to make a change in your community, you don't wait, you work, you make the future happen. So they did, and just 2 generations after his grandmother arrived here with nothing, his brother became member of Congress, and he had the honor of serving as President Obama's cabinet. As Secretary of HUD and Urban Development, Castro worked to expand the promise of opportunity to Americans all over the nation. He made housing more accessible, lessened homelessness among our nation's veterans, and even offered internet access to families in public housing. He spent the last several years traveling around the nation, talking to Americans about their hopes, their dreams, and their fears about the future. And in these divisive times, politics and hateful rhetoric, what he has heard has been incredible. All Americans from all walks of life want the same thing: to do right by our families and have the promise of the America fulfilled. That's the vision we're facing for the Democratic Party. And that's why I'm proud to introduce Secretary Julian Castro.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Hello from San Antonio, Texas. Thank you to our vice chair and our chair, to all of the great Massachusetts Democrats that are on this line. I'm trying to be as quiet as I possibly can be because my 11-year-old and my 5-year-old are still asleep right now, although they should be waking up soon because they got school starting in about an hour. Look, over the last 3 nights, we've seen a powerful and wonderful moving Democratic convention that I think has reminded a lot of us, as we're reminded each time we have a convention, of why we're Democrats. And I wanted to just come by for a few minutes and first say a huge gracias, thank you, to each and every one of you, because if you're up this early, you're on this breakfast, you're on this Zoom call, then I know, as they say here in Texas, that this is not your first rodeo, that you have been giving your blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that Democratic candidates up and down the ballot are elected. And you've probably been doing that for a number of years. And so thank you for that, because y'all have been what has helped to power Democratic victories there in Massachusetts, and I know throughout the country. I also, was reminded last night about what we're fighting for in this country. I grew up, as was mentioned, with a mom who was very active. She was a hellraiser when she was young. She was part of the old Chicano movement in the late 1960s and early 70s. It was basically the Mexican-American civil rights movement. And so when my brother Joaquin and I were growing up, when we were little kids, she used to drag us to speeches and rallies and sometimes marches and 3-hour organizational meetings that for a 9 or 10-year-old were super boring. I'm sure some of y'all can relate, either as kids growing up like that or dragging your own children or grandchildren to those things. But I remember that when my brother and I were about 16 years old, she volunteered on the campaign of a candidate who was trying to become only the second woman to be elected as mayor of San Antonio. And on election night, she took us to this, what was supposed to be a victory party. It didn't turn out that way, but we went to this election night event, and afterward, we were walking out of the hotel in downtown San Antonio. And as we walked out of the hotel, my brother, my mom, and I, on one of the downtown streets, we passed a bus stop. And at the bus stop, there was a young mother who was waiting for the bus with her 2 young children. And she must have seen the shirts that we had on with the candidate's name. And I'll never forget the way that she stopped us and she looked at us and asked, "Did we win?" And I could tell that when she asked that, she wasn't asking, "Did our candidate win? Did you win?" She was asking for her family. Did we win? Did we all win? We have to find a way in this country so that all of us can win again. And each and every one of us on this call knows that that starts with electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, President and Vice President of the United States, and making sure that we dump Mitch McConnell and take back the United States Senate so that we can get important work, meaningful work done for the American people. And we need it now more than ever. As Governor Patrick mentioned so rightly, the character of the country is at stake. As President Obama spoke so powerfully about last night, our democracy is at stake, and the lives and the livelihood of so many Americans who are hurting out there from this pandemic that has needlessly taken more than 170,000 lives in our country, from the economic recession that has followed it, leaving employees, small business owners in a very tough spot, leaving up to 30 million people facing the prospect of eviction by October. And for each and every one of us who continue to use our voice and in our own way to fight for racial justice in this country so that we can live up to the highest ideals of our nation. Those are the stakes for November. And I just wanted to come by and to say thank you. And also, although I know that I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, to ask you to redouble your efforts. This is going to be the most unusual election I think we may face in a long time. The mechanics of voting are going to be different for a lot of people. The mechanics of campaigning, old knock and drag and going to somebody's door and reminding them 3 or 4 times that it's time to go out and vote. That's not going to happen in the same way. And at the same time, we have a president that is so self-absorbed, so selfish, that he's willing to undermine even the United States Postal Service to try and rig the election in his favor. That means that we have to be that much more intense, work that much harder, stay on this for these next 75 days that are left. And I know that if there are any group of Democrats that have done that, that are tried and true, that are committed to making our brighter vision of America possible, it's Massachusetts Democrats. Y'all work hard. Y'all have produced some of the best Democrats in our country's history. You have a rich history that has added so much to this nation. In this important moment, when our country needs you, I hope that not only will you tell your friends and family and do everything else that you can to get out to vote there in Massachusetts. We know that y'all have that covered, but everything else that you can do in each of the other states whether it's volunteering, writing a check if you're able to, telling folks that you know that live in those other states to please get out and vote. Here in Texas, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied. Texas is a swing state in 2020, 38 electoral votes. And we have an opportunity to send a Democratic senator to the United States Senate for the first time in about 30 years. And you can write that story in North Carolina, in Georgia, in a number of other places. I hope that you'll use that energy to do what you can to make sure that we elect Joe Biden and we elect a Democratic Senate. And I believe that on January 20th, 2021, at 12:01 p.m., that we're going to have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and that Joe Biden will have just been sworn in president and Kamala Harris vice president of the United States. And then we can all win. Thank you all, Massachusetts. Take care.
Mrs. Secretary, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the extra early get up. It was just amazing,
you.
you know it, but I can't appreciate it. So thank you for everything that you do from the
For
whole.
sure.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Now we will go over to our first vice chair, Deb Kosikowski.
I didn't unmute myself. I'm sorry. I appreciate Governor Patrick. Every speaker is wonderful so far, but Governor Patrick's background of books was especially impressive, especially since, you know, he has books and I have homemade scones in the background. I think that says a lot about both of us. I'm here to introduce you to a friend, to you, my friends, and you know that there's nothing I like better than for my friends to be friends. U.S. Representative to Congress Grace Meng is serving her 4th term in the House of Representatives. She represents the 6th Congressional District of New York, which encompasses the borough of Queens, West, Central, and Northeast. Grace is the first and only Asian American member of Congress from New York State. And she's the first female from Queens since former Vice Presidential nominee Geraldine Ferraro. Grace is a member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee and its Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations, Homeland Security and Commerce, Justice, Science is a big one this year, and related agency. She serves on the House Ethics Commission. She's passed several notable pieces of legislation. These laws include religious freedom, making Queens historic sites part of the National Park Service, striking the word Oriental from federal law, and protecting public housing residents from insufficient heat. She's also been involved in signing into law her measures to assist veterans, members of the military, provisions to improve consumer protections and safeguards for children. Grace was born in Queens, raised in Bayside and Flushing, a part of the borough. She attended local schools and graduated from Stuyvesant High School and the University of Michigan. She then earned a law degree from Yeshiva University, Benjamin Cardozo School of Law. Prior to serving in Congress, Grace was a member of the New York State Assembly and a public interest lawyer. And one little added note I'd like to make. Grace is a very powerful advocate for the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And I would like to very quickly introduce her to 6 of my friends, peer delegates from her community: Sam Liao, Beth Huang, Wayne Ye, David Mazumder, Nazda Alam, and Jessica Tang. Our Asian population, our API population is 6% in Massachusetts, and our delegates make 5.3% of our delegation. We fell a little short, but we make progress every time. So thank you so much. And Grace, I'm looking forward to being inspired by you as always.
Thank you, Deb, to our Vice Chair Kosikowski for that warm introduction. And you're actually the one that inspires me. You know, Deb was one of the first people I met during my then campaign for DNC vice chair and is really one of my go-to people when I'm working on certain issues that a New York City girl might not know a lot about. For example, issues in the rural areas of this country, like broadband access. I have gotten more involved in that issue because of leaders like Deb. So thank you for your friendship. Thank you to Chairman Bickford and your whole team and the Massachusetts delegation for inviting me here today and for including me for today's event. It's been such a pleasure to work with you at the DNC. And I thank you for your constant warmth, your friendship, and your concern about growing our party. So you all know this is the last day of our unconventional convention. And while I wish we could all be there in person and we'd be able to meet each other and see each other after such a long time, this is obviously a safer way to meet. And I didn't know exactly what to expect. But I will say halfway through this convention, or 3/4 way, I am really impressed. One of the reasons why I joined the DNC was because I felt like voices across America weren't being adequately heard, and our party needed to do a better job at listening and to paying attention to people across the country, whether it was rural voters, young voters, and communities of color. And so when we saw showcases like our roll call, for example, again, very unconventional, but I got so many messages from folks, especially in New York, about how they never knew about the issues that faced XYZ state. And I think that it's a beautiful testament to how we really took a tough situation with this convention and the coronavirus and made it into something that was that much more impactful and hopefully effective. So are we having trouble hearing me?
No, we're hearing you fine.
Oh, okay. I saw someone. Okay. And so, I feel so hopeful after this week, hearing from our leaders this week, especially our historical candidate, our first Black and Asian American woman on the vice presidential ticket. And we're so close to getting our country back on track, to restoring real leadership to this White House. I mean, can you imagine what it would feel like to know that you have someone in the White House, that our president and vice president would wake up every single day actually thinking about ways to protect and to improve the lives of our fellow Americans? In the past few years of this administration, from day one, probably even before, our hearts have been broken over and over again. This president has been constantly thinking of new and creative ways to tear apart communities, to make people feel like they are not truly American, and to literally break up and separate families. Whether it's banning people simply because of their religion, or separating young children from their families, or how he has handled or mishandled the coronavirus. I'll tell you, as someone who represents probably one of the top 5 districts affected by coronavirus in the country, in late March and early April, when we were dealing with this, when my day job as a congresswoman was sort of redefined, because I was getting calls from, famous ER doctors who probably on a typical day had all the resources and connections at their fingertips. They called me without having a personal relationship to me, crying on the phone, desperate for help, telling me that they believe that they and their colleagues were going to die. So we have witnessed here in New York and across the country firsthand about how this president has abandoned his people. And that's not something that we can afford to happen again. There's so much at stake, as our secretary has mentioned earlier. It's not just about ensuring that the Democrats control the White House. Democracy is at stake. Human lives are at stake. If Joe Biden and Kamala don't win back the White House, more people will needlessly die. And I say that because we have seen this happen. We have been witnessing this over the last few months and over the last few years. And so, you know, our party, our Democratic Party, I'm so proud to be a part of this growing and expanding party. We have shown up strong this week, and we have united around our shared vision for America. We know what we're fighting for. We know what we're fighting against. And as we celebrate tonight's programming, and I know we're all excited to hear from Joe Biden, and I know that everyone on this call knows that this is just the beginning of the fight. We celebrate this week, and Chairman Bickford and your whole team knows, we can celebrate this week, but we have so much work to do. We've all seen, and most of us have probably known about the decency of a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ticket. But we can't assume that most of America knows. You know, again, part of the reason why I got involved in the DNC, and I'm so thankful to the leadership of Chairman Perez, because he prioritized and focused the improvement of our infrastructure and the need for better and more effective outreach. You know, whether you're talking about, and we've seen this as we travel through the country, we've heard this from Democrats straight from their mouths to us in the past few years. Whether you're in rural communities, communities of color, you might not be, you know, hearing the same messages that we sort of party insiders already know. And so just because we are watching these convention speeches and watching MSNBC and CNN, we can't assume that communities of color, even in our own states like Massachusetts and New York, they might not be getting any of this, right? And so that's how much more we have to do, whether we're reaching out to ethnic media, Black radio, agricultural newsletters, and I've had one too many people tell me that only Republicans advertise in their agricultural newsletters. We must make sure that we are getting the message out. We've spent the last 3 years, probably every room I walk into, people ask me, well, what was the Democrats' message last time? You know, we didn't have a easy and catchy slogan like Make America Great Again. But it wasn't just that. It's not just the message. In many cases, we didn't even have a messenger. I've been to many parts of this country in red, purple, and even blue states where they told me the Democratic Party wasn't a sufficient enough listener and wasn't responsive enough. So I'm real proud of the work that the DNC and the work that we've done in partnership with the Massachusetts Dem Party, what we've done the past few years. It's common sense, but you know, we need to make sure we're getting that message out. So every day we need to wake up and ask ourselves, what are we doing to get Joe Biden into the White House? And how are we having the backs and supporting our amazing vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris? There's so much at stake. I want to thank you, each and every one of you. I know that many of you played a major role in helping the House win back our majority. Can you imagine this country right now if the House was under the control of Republicans also, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi was not in charge? So thank you so much for all that you've done in 2018 and every race and every zip code. Our work is far from over, but I'm encouraged by being here with you. Thank you, and please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm not that far from you. I hope I can visit you all in person again one day very soon. And thank you, Chairman.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. And everybody in their squares are giving you high fives and everything else. It's the way we do these virtual things. Thank you very much. And thank you for everything that you do. It now gives me great pleasure, as we do in Massachusetts, we've got some great stars. And so a person that we all know and really needs no introduction, and we're seeing all around the state this day, this week, these past few weeks, our Senator Ed Markey. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Gus. And thank you to all the Democrats who have joined today. Thank you for all of the great work which you are doing. We are not an ordinary state. We are a special place. We are the revolutionary state. The American Revolution began in Massachusetts. The abolitionist movement began in Massachusetts. The suffragette movement, the movement for universal healthcare began in Massachusetts. The same-sex marriage movement began in Massachusetts. We are the revolutionaries, and that is what I am seeing and feeling all across Massachusetts this year. I can feel people who are rising up and who are demanding fundamental change in our nation. They are saying to me over and over again that they can see the structural racism which is built into our society, and they want it changed. They want justice to be on the ballot here this November. They want justice to be what is on the agenda beginning at noon on January 20th of 2021. They want justice. They want healthcare justice, Medicare for all. They want environmental justice. They want a Green New Deal. They want criminal justice that roots out this incredible system of school to prison, which we have built into our society. We are 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the prisoners in the world behind bars in the United States. We have 5% of the world's population. 1 in 3 women in the world who are behind bars in the United States. We have more African-American men behind bars right now than the total number of slaves in the United States in 1850. People want justice. We have a society right now where 3 individuals control more wealth than the bottom 50 percentile of our population combined. We need economic justice in our country. And we need racial justice. We know after the murder of George Floyd that we have to repeal qualified immunity. We have to have a new system of accountability which is built into our country. And we know that Black lives matter, that Black voices matter, that Black votes will matter this year, because we must, as Democrats, put justice on the ballot. We also have to ensure that we look over at the carnage that goes on in the streets of our country every single day. And finally, once and for all, we must take on the NRA. We must make the NRA stand for not relevant anymore in American politics. That is what this year has to be all about. And we must also ensure that we are going to take care of the families in this country. We have a president in the Oval Office who has been criminally negligent. He has ignored the real steps that must be taken in order to guarantee that we will, in fact, deal with this pandemic as it's affecting ordinary families. He has been a racist and criminally negligent. And the antidote is going to be our great new leaders who will be sworn in on January 20th. Joe Biden will be a leader that ensures that we as a nation, that we take care of every single family. Kamala and we actually introduced legislation just 2 months ago calling for $2,000 per month per individual in order to make sure that everyone gets what they need so that they can pay the bills, so that they can pay the rent, pay the mortgage, pay for healthcare. It is all towards the goal of ensuring that everyone is taken care of in our society. You know, all across the Commonwealth, but all across the nation, people are asking a question so simple, so basic, that you really would think you would not have to ask it. And that is, can we have a nation where children do not have to fear the future, but dream about the future. And that's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be, because they're going to take each and every one of these issues, and they're going to have a positive, optimistic view of what our country can be. You know, I know Joe and I know Kamala very, very well, and they both have the ability, and they are going to lift the gaze of our country to the constellation of possibilities for every individual, for every family, for every person, not only in our country, but for the whole planet. And I know that we have a real chance here to have our FDR moment next January when we swear in Joe Biden, because he is the man we are going to need in order to deal with all of these issues. And Kamala is just like a special, magical X factor candidate that is going to help us to win this election and then give us the kind of leadership, inspirational leadership that we need in the White House. So we are at this turning point. We have a real chance if we just keep the pedal to the metal here for the final 2.5 months. We will transform our country. We will, in fact, give hope to all of those families that right now are so desperately in need of help. So I want to thank all of the Massachusetts Democrats. Thank you for everything that you are doing. I'm doing everything I can in order to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the new leaders of our country. And I know you are too. Massachusetts is the best Democratic state party in the United States. There's no close number two. We're not just the Bay State, we're the brain state. We just don't agonize, we organize. And that's what we're going to have to do in order to make sure that we have this historic victory. Thank you all so much, each and every one of you. Let us get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into their historic places, and then we will transform this country. So thank you so much, Gus. Thank you to everybody else that has helped to organize this fabulous event.
Senator, thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's great to see you on the side of the street. Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
Great. And now I'm going to introduce current DNC member, Kate Donahue.
Thank you, Gus. Today, I have the honor of introducing DNC Chair Tom Perez. Chair Perez was previously Secretary of Labor and Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Tom became chair at a very difficult time. Secretary Clinton had just lost the election, but it was an opportunity for him to get to know and learn from members across the country. Tom has been more engaged with members than any other chair during my 8 years. When I lost my son, Tom reached out to me personally with incredible empathy and compassion. Tom has been remarkably supportive of the grassroots, recognizing the Democratic Party's serial canvassers. A few years ago, while I was running a canvass with a group of students from England and Ireland, Tom called to talk to me about something. I had an idea. He agreed to my request, and I put him on speaker, and the students gathered around the phone to hear from the DNC chair. As of gavel down tonight, my years on the DNC will come to an end. For today, I can still introduce my chair, Tom Perez.
Good morning, everyone. Kate, thank you for that great introduction, that very kind introduction. And thank you so much, Kate, for your service. You have been such a good friend. If you look up servant leadership in the dictionary, you would see a picture of Kate. Kate has always been about servant leadership, about helping others, and about, I think, making sure that we are constantly building the pipeline of future generational leaders. I remember learning once about what I call the irrelevance theory of leadership. I want to become as irrelevant as possible as soon as possible. And I do that by trying to make sure that I am constantly mentoring people and encouraging new people to get in and get involved. Kate, that's what you've been doing throughout your distinguished career. And while you're stepping down from your current position, your DNA prohibits you from stepping down from other roles because you're going to continue to be an activist for vulnerable people. You're going to be continuing your work to make sure we elect Democrats, and you will continue to fight for issues, and you will always have your wonderful son in your head and in your heart, and I will always have you in my prayers. I also wanted to say a special thanks to Sue Thompson, who is also stepping down. Sue has been a remarkable partner and leader as well. You guys have a deep, deep bench, and I'm really, really grateful. And Chairman Bickford, thank you for your partnership over the entirety of my tenure. You have been not only a leader in Massachusetts, but you have been such a friend for me. So many times I was thinking about an issue. How do I handle this? How do I handle that? I'd always call you, and you always took my call, and you always gave me insights, and I really, really appreciate it. And Vice Chair Deb, thank you so much as well for your continuing work in Massachusetts. It's so important that we all continue during this moment when there is so much at stake. And there's one more person I want to just single out, because I look at where we are now and I think about where we were back in 2017. We had a lot of work to do back in 2017. We had to rebuild our infrastructure, and we had to rebuild trust. And I know trust building is a timeless journey. And what we had in 2017, you all remember, we in many respects were a house divided, and we couldn't be that way. And Jim Roosevelt was one of those folks early on our Unity Reform Commission, and so many other things. Jim stepped to the plate in an enormous way. I don't know a more patient person in America, perhaps, than Jim Roosevelt and Lorraine Miller, who helped us get through a really, really important, challenging period. We needed to learn how to trust each other again. We needed to learn how to actively listen to each other again. My mother taught me you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and you ought to listen. And Jim and Lorraine, and they helped us get through a really important process on the Unity Reform Commission. We implemented some really, really important reforms. They are pillars of patience. They are remarkable people. And Jim, I simply want to say thank you. We had Jim as a co-chair of one of our standing committees this time around. And again, as always, Jim dispensed his duties with remarkable excellence. I'm not going to talk about the Red Sox because I've stopped watching the Red Sox. So I will move on, other than to note that I still have on my iPhone the entire bottom of the 9th of the 2018 World Series. And periodically, rather than watching the present, I would live in the past because I need to dwell in the past when it comes to the Red Sox. I had the privilege of attending Game 5 with my son. It was a bucket list item for me. It was a memorable night, and it was great. And it seems all too long ago, doesn't it? But better days will come there, and better days will come in 75 days when we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This has been a remarkable week. My dad taught me when I was a kid, you always have to count on the unexpected. That's what he used to say in his broken, I used to call it Ricky Ricardo English. You always have to count on the unexpected. And boy, we've learned that lesson in the connection with the planning for this convention. Fortunately, we've had a spectacular team. Massachusetts connections abound for our good friend Joe Salmonese. And Joe has led such a spectacular team here. And the thing about it is, months ago, not weeks ago, we understood that it was a distinct possibility that this virus was going to persist. And so not only were we putting off the convention from July to August to buy some time in the hope that we were wrong, but we were also pivoting then. You plan for the best, you hope for the best, but you plan for everything. And that's exactly what we did. And I hope you've seen that, notwithstanding the fact that this is a very unconventional convention. It's nonetheless an inspiring convention. I know I've been inspired by our luminaries like Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Elizabeth Warren, so many others, and equally inspired by the unsung heroes, these folks like Kristen. I don't know if you remember her from Monday, and the woman in Arizona whose father, a healthy 65-year-old Trump supporter, whose only pre-existing condition, as she pointed out, was that he trusted Donald Trump. He trusted the governor of Arizona when they lied to him and said, hey, this thing's not serious. Go out, do whatever the heck you want. And he died. So many stories like that. Our theme for this convention has been not only uniting the party, but uniting America. This is a convention truly for everyone. If you are a hardcore Democrat, this is a convention for you. If you're an independent or a Party of Lincoln Republican, join us. If you haven't voted in a long time or you've been voting for Jill Stein, join us. Our values, our vision, our inclusion, our empathy, that's what the American people crave. And I've known Joe Biden for 25 years, and I've been watching this week, and I think we've really captured the essence of Joe Biden. He is someone who understands that America's at its best when we all have a seat at the table. If you go back to that remarkable array of states when we did the roll call, a truly inspiring and uplifting moment. And if you go back to the roll call from Pennsylvania, where Senator Casey announced their roll call, you just look at that house behind him, and that was Joe Biden's house growing up. And if you are that steel worker in Pennsylvania or the auto worker in Michigan or Wisconsin or anywhere around this country, and you see that house, you see, wow, there's a guy who grew up just like me. And Joe Biden, what you've seen this week is what I've seen for 25 years and what the nation needs for the next 4 years. Not only empathy and compassion, but competence and vision, a bold vision. Thank you to so many people who helped us with our platform. Our platform is a bold document. It's inspirational and aspirational. And we came together around it in a really remarkable fashion. Everybody had a seat at the table. We had debate, no doubt about it. It was passionate debate. That's what makes our party better. But we have no division because we came together, we built a big table, and now we're going to move forward. We've got 75 days till the weekend, folks. And I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing and continue to do. I know you have a spirited primary coming up. I know there's work to be done in Massachusetts, and you have continued to win races in parts of the state that people said you couldn't win. Another tribute to Chairman Bickford. We have to continue our work across the country. Our battlegrounds continue to expand. Our partnership with the Biden campaign has never been stronger. It's been a seamless transition. I think we've written the model for how a campaign and a campaign committee come together. We made history last night. That was certainly a night I will never forget with Kamala Harris. I've known her for years. I've known her family for years. I worked at the Justice Department side by side as part of the senior leadership team with her brother-in-law. And so I feel like I have a window into her heart. And we already had a lot of energy across America. Kamala's selection was a home run, and it has added further energy. And so many young women across America can look up after last night and say, wow, I can do this. So many young women of color, especially looking and saying, the future, the sky is the limit. You told me, Mom, that I could be anything. And now I watch Kamala Harris and I believe you even more. That's what young people across America are saying after last night. So we've got more work to do, folks. And you know what to do. And you've been so helpful, Gus. In addition to the work you're doing in Massachusetts, the work you've been doing to help us recruit folks who are helping elsewhere, whether it's New Hampshire or elsewhere. Our battlegrounds are increasing, our opportunities are increasing. I think we can win not only the White House, but I really do think we can take the Senate. And you know the work that's being done in New Hampshire to re-elect Jean Shaheen, up in Maine to elect Sarah Gideon. I mean, there are so many states where we've got great opportunities in the Senate. We've got an opportunity to flip anywhere from 6 to 10 legislative chambers. We've already flipped 10. You know what that means for redistricting. And so there's a wind at our back. We got our butts kicked 10 years ago. And 2010 is a terrible year to get your butts kicked because the following year they're drawing lines in states. We have an opportunity to return the favor, and we are focused like a laser, not only on Joe Biden and Kamala, but on making sure we do our level best. Arizona, to give you just one example, we win 2 seats in the House, 3 seats in the state Senate. We flipped that chamber. When I was out there 10 years ago prosecuting Joe Arpaio, you could have had a meeting of the House Democratic Caucus in a minivan. Now we're about to take the chamber. That's progress, and we see that everywhere. We might be able to flip a chamber in Michigan, 4 seats there. In North Carolina, the state Senate there. We flip that state Senate, we expand Medicaid. So many other opportunities. Texas, 9 seats. We flip Texas, and that is a game changer. There would be another 4 to 5 congressional seats that would come into play because they'd have to draw fair maps. So we are leaving it all on the table, and you have been indispensably helpful. And I want to say again, thank you so much, Gus. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you so much, Deb. Thank you so much, Jim Roosevelt. Y'all have provided so much thought leadership and passion and boots on the ground and clipboards in our digital world. So thank you so much. And I think tonight's going to be another great night, and I hope you love it. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. And you've all just witnessed, this is a chair that knows so much, so many details about this country. Kate, were you going to say something?
I just was saying thank you, Chair.
Yep, absolutely. And I encourage everybody to unmute and just claps for the whole speaking program. Just an absolutely incredible breakfast. It was great to have Governor Patrick, Secretary Castro, Congressman Ming.